Welcome to the Interior Analysis Podcast. For this one, I'm in the lead. I'm Jelani Kelly.
I'm Evan Westman.
And we have David Jones here today, joining us for this Get Out episode. Welcome, David.
Hello, I'm excited. I was here for Kong versus Godzilla, but I'm
Yes.
much more versed in horror than I am monster movies, so this is going to be more exciting for me.
Yes. So, when did this movie come out? 2017?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to go through everybody's experience with at least the first time you saw it. I originally wasn't going to see this movie.
Wow.
Yeah. I was confused as hell by the marketing. The trailer made little to no sense to me, and it didn't seem like something worth watching, which is insane to think about now. But crazily enough, my roommate, sophomore year of college, is the one that convinced me to go see it, and I saw it with one of my other roommates, and boy, am I glad I did. Do you guys remember what your first experiences were like with this?
Vividly, if I can jump in, because
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
go
the
ahead.
first time at a certain movie theater in Middletown, Delaware. So that's always impressionable, your first time at a new location.
Mm-hmm.
And then the theater was
Yeah.
packed, which was rare. And it was like me, my sister, my brother, which was also rare because we don't usually go out together, let alone to see a movie. But my brother was like, "You have to see this movie," and he's kind of like, he's not a cinephile, but he is a film geek. And I just remember my jaw being on the floor for about half of it once everything started to kick off, and leaving being like, "This was the Key and Peele guy."
Yeah.
That was him, because before Get Out, Jordan Peele was just the Key and Peele guy. One of the
Right.
two. Like, I feel like people who weren't watching those, now there's just, he's such a big director. It's such an interesting thing to look at hindsight. But yeah, it was really just an impressive film.
What a jump, going from sketch comedy to I don't know what to call it, just horror. We'll just call it horror for now. We'll address
Prestige
the-
Oscar movie. Like,
Okay, yeah, that
Yeah,
too.
yeah, but
He
totally
got, he
horror.
got a
It is
Best Picture
definitely
nomination
horror.
in his first feature movie. Like, I don't know if that's a
That he
record,
wrote
but
and
like, it's got to be a
directed.
rarity, at least.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty insane.
Especially because it won Best Screenplay, and I don't know the last time a horror film won Best Original Screenplay.
Oh, yeah.
Rosemary's
Yeah.
Baby, question mark? Might be. Have to look into that.
Wow.
Yeah, it usually gets overlooked.
Mhm.
How I first saw it, so apparently I'm the only one of the three of us who didn't see it in theaters. I feel like I vaguely remember hearing people talk about it when it first came out, but I don't. I think maybe I saw a trailer for it and like didn't really think anything of it until, I don't know, maybe I must have heard about it somehow because I saw it like, I want to say late 2017. So there had been like some kind of hype about it. I think it was before it got its Oscar nominations, though. I watched it just by myself, like on my laptop or something. That was the first time, and I was like, this is just kind of like weird. Like, it was definitely memorable, but I think I definitely liked it the least the first time watching it. But then, like, maybe a month later, or even like, it might have only been like 2 weeks, my freshman year floor, we were all just like, we're gonna watch a movie together, and I think it was between Coco and Get Out, and Get Out was one we could get legally at the time because I think Coco wasn't on VOD yet, and it was like such a different experience watching it with the group because like everyone's reactions to everything was like so much bigger, and I don't know if it was better to watch it the second time like that because part of me wishes like maybe it would have hit like all the weirdness of it that I felt the first time would have like had better context with other people in the room to like gauge their reactions too. But like as it was, I went in having already seen it, and of course I appreciated it so much more the second time because I started seeing like everything that's layered in there, and we'll get into that. It was much different and much better that second time around.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it was in such close succession because if not, I don't know if I would have like been as inclined to go back and rewatch it because like I said, it wasn't like it. I didn't love it the first time. So like the first thing I wanted to talk about with this, mostly because of our decade recap, episode that we did is this movie's influence. I don't know how many people listening to this have listened to our decade recap episode, but the first topic we covered in that was like everyone's top 5 most influential movies of the decade, and Get Out was tied for the most mentioned. Now, like, as a caveat, we only polled about like 25 people for that, so it's not like the best sampling, but that still says something that like it was tied for the, I think 7 people mentioned it, including both me and you, Jelani, and our guest on that show, Mason. All 3 of us put it on our most influential list. And the only movie that I think competed with it was The Avengers, the first one.
Jeez.
So, like, I just wanted to get into that because I feel like this is probably the movie of the last 5 years that has been the most impactful on what has come, like, what has been made since then. It created a market for horror movies that, I mean, not that horror movies weren't like already successful at the time. Like, I don't know what was like the big horror movie of a couple years before that, but it was like a proven genre, but it like changed it. And now I think like we have stuff like Hereditary or Midsommar.
Yeah, it was the birth of art house horror.
Yeah, and I feel like there's some older stuff, like I don't necessarily agree with this judgment, but people cite The Shining as like a really, I guess, prestigious horror movie, like that deserves like, you know, that's considered like a classic in a way that like the Insidious movies probably won't be.
It's also an Easter egg in this movie.
Not.
The Shining is referenced when Rod's on the phone at the airport. Yeah, they're over the intercom. It says Flight 237, which is a reference to the most haunted room in the hotel in The Shining.
I didn't know that. Okay.
I just watched.
I totally agree because The Shining is, and similar to like Stepford Wives, Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, like The Get Out's not the first horror movie to elevate itself to the point where it's just prestigious filmmaking, but it was the first one of recent years, and the perspective that Jordan Peele brought to it, I think, was like the gateway into new things that we have today. Because like even people say like you're not getting Black Klansman without Get Out, or you're not getting Black Panther without Get Out, which is a very real deal.
What about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboots and the Halloween reboots? Those, no, I'm kidding. Those,
I wish, you know.
That's all I could think of as far as like horror movies went before this, like in recent years. Just reboots of classic slashers that weren't really doing anything with the genre, anything new besides upping the gore.
Yeah, like I think it raised the bar. Maybe it wasn't like a trendsetter. Maybe it was more like a reminder that like, hey,
definitely trendsetter though.
Yeah, I think it's a trendsetter in other cases, but in terms of horror, I think it was more like a reminder that like, hey, horror can be more than just jump scares every few minutes. Yeah, because there's not even that many jump scares in this. Like,
no,
and the ones that are there are not like big. They're like pretty quiet as jump scares go.
I think the biggest jump scare for me was the deer in the beginning.
Right, and that's not even a horror thing. That's just like an accident. It's not even like part of the horror element. I feel like.
Right.
I mean, I'd be open to like disagreement on that because I don't understand the deer, and I want to get into that at some point because I intensely don't understand the deer.
Well, I can be reading too far into it, but this is my theory on it, right? Because upon the rewatch, everyone has the whole like she doesn't want him to give, because she stands up for it, and it's very like, oh my god, you're being racist the first time, and you think she's like great and woke, and then you go back into it and you see she's being super sinister because she doesn't want any record that he was around this area at that time because they're going to be abducting him into the body. And then you also have like the visual theme of like deer in the headlights, and like that's what he kind of is in this moment. And then he also it literally is when he goes to the sunken place. But at the same time, this could all be bullshit, and I could just be reading too far into it.
No, there's I don't think you're super far off, but there is meaning to the deer metaphor throughout this movie.
Because he uses the deer to kill the guy at the end, right? The head, the bust.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
and it's a deer that they have on the wall, and the dad says, like, man, I don't like the deer. They're taking over all this. So, like, that's gotta... I don't know what it symbolizes, but it must symbolize something, right?
The only one I don't completely understand is the dad hating the deer. I thought deer could have just been a substitute for black people because he was like sick of them, and I don't remember the
Right.
quote.
He kind of talks about them like a minority, like
Yeah.
the way that some people talk about minorities or like immigrants.
He's like,
And the
he doesn't
way,
mind
like-
them dying for being nuisances or something along those lines. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
And there's like a whole kind of duality to like deforestation that's going on in deers being forced that you're seeing more in suburbs and they're being nuisances, and then also just like the racism of like gentrification and like how people are like, oh no, more people of color are moving into my neighborhood, I gotta bounce.
But there is a reason I'm going to be mentioning this video a lot because it explains a lot, because it's from the director's mouth. There was a Vanity Fair video on YouTube that I just rewatched. Peele confirms that the deer means something. The deer in the beginning is a reference to his mother dying, and it's like he's seeing his mother die because it's dying by the side of the road after being hit by a car. So there's a connection with that.
Oh, okay. I hadn't seen that because he does.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that because it just spends such a long time with him looking
Staring
at the
at
dead
it.
deer, and I was
Yeah.
like, "What is that?" That
Yeah.
explains a lot with that. Yeah.
And then the buck thing that he kills, not Chris, what's the dad's name?
Dean, I think.
Dean.
Wing
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah, he Buck is ahead of the head of a deer family, and Chris uses the head of the deer family to kill the head of the Armitage family. That's really all that means. That's what Jordan said it meant. There wasn't much to it besides that. It was strange they kept like holding shots on it for so long. Like when he was in the chair, the deer was just staring down at him. I think there was a reason for that, but yeah, that's the deer metaphor. It means a few different things. Don't know why it's a deer, but it'd be like that. I don't know.
He likes to use animals because like in Us it's rabbits too.
Yeah. So there's your answer, Evan. That's
No, that's a much better answer than I was expecting to get, because like I've been wondering that like ever since I saw it. I was like, there's definitely a symbolism with the deer, and I feel like I get some of it, but like I had no idea that most of all that you guys said was like present there. So
also fun fact: Peele voiced the dying deer.
I did not.
I think
know
I
that.
did
Yeah.
read that.
Yep.
That's awesome.
I didn't remember it making any sound.
Yeah, it was just crying out, and that was Jordan Peele's voice. So you're welcome.
Some impressive voice acting then.
All I had for influence and legacy was, since this movie, people have been excited to see more from Peele, especially since this was his first freaking film. And then didn't this also like put Blumhouse on the map?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. For
Like
sure.
now they're known for
It at least
creative
made them
movies.
legit, you know. Everyone
Yeah.
else, every other time you saw Blumhouse, it was always like with a shifted eye, but then it was
Mhm.
legitimized.
Yeah, so now they're known for like producing creative horror movies.
And they milked the fuck out of it. By
Oh,
the way.
yeah.
Whenever
Oh,
you
yeah.
see it, it's like the studio that brought you Get Out.
Yeah, for sure.
And they do the same thing with Jordan Peele's name now too. Like it can be
Yeah.
stuff that he like is barely attached to, and they're like from Jordan Peele or like something or other, Jordan Peele in huge letters, and he might have like basically nothing to do.
He
with
could have
it.
walked by set, sneezed, and they would have said it's from Jordan Peele. Like, yeah.
One day boom operator, Jordan Peele. It's gonna get butts in seats though.
Right.
So-
So they're excited to see more from him and more creativity and messages in the horror genre in general, and that's definitely what we got with horror movies now. Anything else for influence / legacy?
Yeah, we kind of like, I forget which of you mentioned it. I think, David, you mentioned it. Like, I think there's some movies that owe, not necessarily their existence in all cases, but I think there's a couple movies that owe their existence, or at least their success, or like reception to Get Out success.
Spike Lee has said on record he would not have been able to make Black Klansman if Jordan Peele didn't make Get Out.
Wow.
Like, the studios would not go for it.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one. Sorry to Bother You is another
Yes.
one.
Yeah.
And I think this isn't a movie, but Lovecraft Country feels like it's kind of a spiritual, like, follower of Get Out. I don't want to say spiritual sequel. Yeah, I saw like the first episode or two, and I should keep going with it because I heard it was good, and I just never continued. But even like Parasite, which is like not a super similar movie in terms of themes or anything, but the reception that got at the Oscars a year or so ago, I feel like that might have been taken a little bit more seriously as like a real Best Picture contender, because we kind of had this precedent of like something that's a little, because I don't know if you could call it Parasite a genre movie, but it's not a traditional drama, and it's dealing with like this big socio-political theme. I think that's like maybe an aftershock of Get Out. That's a little bit of a stretch there, but I think they're at least like somewhat similar in like, I don't want to say genre, but identity. I also really like that the movies that have kind of sprung from it, or like that quote unquote owe their existence to it, they're not super similar. Like, they're very original. They're all like talking about different types of issues. Like, it wasn't as if we suddenly got 15 horror movies that were about like black people getting their bodies snatched. That wasn't The Imitation. The Imitation was original movies dealing with all different themes,
Right.
which I really like, because it's made this like new market for original ideas. Whereas like a lot of the other movies that we referenced for influential, it was like especially Avengers, like what did Avengers spark? It sparked every other studio trying to make their own connected universe that was just a carbon copy of the MCU.
Right.
It made everything more the same, whereas I feel like Get Out is like, its influence and legacy is that it opened up so much more opportunity to be original and different, and like make movies with really compelling and deep social themes, regardless of anything that this movie does like within itself. That is like one of the most important things about it, I think, is like the aftershocks.
So let's get into planting details / rewatchability. Evan, do you want to kick this off as well? I know this was your...
Yeah, I mean, I kind of talked about before, like how this movie is so much better and so much different of an experience when you rewatch it and you realize how layered it is in every way. Like, I think this might rank as like one of the top like 20 most rewardingly rewatchable movies for me. Top 20 doesn't sound that good, but when 8 of them are Nolan movies, like, I hope that makes it sound like I'm praising it as much as I am. I want to hear from both of you. How did it change for you on rewatch? We already talked about it a little bit. How different of an experience was that? Because you both sound like you had a more positive initial experience with it than me. But, I mean, I think you've both seen it more than once by now,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah. Figured you rewatched it for this, and you both said you saw it in theaters. So, yeah, like what do you feel like were the biggest things you noticed? Because I noticed a lot, but it sounds like both of you have already mentioned things that I had no idea were in there. So,
Rewatching movies is always such a fun task, because I try to... It's a fake rule that I tell myself, but I really try to follow that I will watch anything twice, because it's like Stephen King once said, when he reads something, he reads it the first time just to enjoy it, and then he reads it the second time to like dissect or analyze. And if I enjoy something, I really want to go back and do that second time. So I definitely felt that when I was out of the theater, and I saw it very promptly again after. And I was just so impressed. I was so impressed by the little things that you don't think about and that were so sinister. Like I already mentioned, like her detouring the police, and you think she's this proud moment where you're getting to know this character, and you're still getting to know the character, and that's the rewatchability. Because when you rewatch it, you're like, oh my god, This is so sick. What is happening? Like the horror element just raises because you're literally screaming, "Get out the TV!" You're like, "Man, do not go, do not!" Like every step of the way, which is why. What's his best friend's name? Who
Rod.
saves him?
Rod.
Rod. Which is what the audience is him the entire way. That's
Oh,
why he's the
yeah.
comic relief. Like, and that's why you love him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was just so impressed. I was so impressed by the little things with the grandma and grandpa that you don't pick up the first time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge one for
Right?
me.
Yeah.
It's just so impressive, and just everything within the little details of they're all arriving in their nice black Cadillacs and their black suits. There's just so many little moments that you just appreciate. And I don't know if he shines more as a writer or as a director, but he really is an auteur, which I think, not to go back to the last topic too heavily, but I think his auteurship is something that has breathed a breath of fresh air into horror and just movies in general, because I don't think we were seeing that in the 2000s and 2010s that much outside of like Nolan and like Wes Anderson. Every other thing was just like a studio machine.
Right. Every time I watch this over, I find new lines that mean something different if you know the twist. For example, going back to the grandma and grandpa. Dean, when he said grandma and grandpa died, he said we couldn't let them go. And you think he's referring to the maid and gardener, but he's referring to the grandmother and grandfather.
Right.
Like, still finding stuff after seeing this movie, like, I want to be honest, probably 4+ times. Definitely more, I think. But, like, still finding lines like that, like, it's insane to me. Oh, this is just a side note. Even though I'm aware of what's going to happen, I can never help, whenever I rewatch it, I can't help but, like, wish for Rose to give Chris the keys so they can just leave. And I'm like,
yeah.
Rose, just give him the keys, even though I know it's not going to happen. I think his increasing desperation hits hard for me every time for some reason, and I'm just like, just Rose, the keys.
His performance in that scene is so good too, because he starts off being real low key like he does, and then you see him getting so like,
Yeah,
we gotta get those keys, Rose. Like, he's so good with it.
I find it hilarious, and I think it's my brother and mom, we mention it whenever we mention this movie, is we found it hilarious when Dean is like, what is your purpose in life, Chris? And Chris is just like, finding those keys for me. And I was just like, oh, I felt that. And let's talk about, well, you mentioned performances, Evan. Let's get into the performances. As many times as I've seen this, I've never even considered, until you mentioned it, I've never even considered the fact that Walter and Lakeith are like acting, and they're acting as different people. Like, they're supposed to be two people, and I think, like, I've always just seen them as the other person inside their bodies on the rewatches, and I think that speaks to their performances 100%. I don't know, and Georgina as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, all three of them really embody those roles. Like, and the first time, like I said, that was part of the weirdness of it. Like, the first time I was just like, what is the deal with, like, Walter acting like this? I thought it was just like weirdness for no reason. But now I watch it and I'm like, oh my God, like, he's doing such a good job playing somebody who's, I guess, like 90. Yeah, he's like 90 years old or whatever. Like, his laugh when he's talking to Chris, like, it's like insane, like how creepy that is, but also like when you imagine who he's supposed to be. Like, I think he's that guy who does the video, right? That, like, that's the same guy, I'm pretty sure. So when you imagine like that guy doing it, it's like he's really nailing this performance. And then like Lakeith Stanfield too, in like the 3 minutes that we see him in that party scene, like, is maybe the most memorable character in the movie.
Yeah.
Especially, like, even that first moment when Chris is like, hey, like, taps him on the shoulder, and he turns around, you're like, oh, okay, nope. Like, his eyes in that like, he's so good. And he's like, Chris was just saying how he was, like, so much more comfortable with my being here. And then Chris, like, Daniel Kaluuya's reaction in that scene also sells it. But, like, Lakeith Stanfield, like, thank God he got his Oscar nomination this year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he ever would have for this small of a role in Get Out, but like, I think if you could give an Oscar to an ensemble, like an entire cast, I think Get Out would have deserved that. Like, Daniel Kaluuya got his nomination, and like, yeah, if anyone in the movie deserves one, it's him. But I think really the whole cast could have like collectively gotten an Oscar nomination for this.
For sure. Allison Williams as well. Evan, you mentioned in your notes is the phone scene.
Mm-hmm.
I
yeah, because her
her
body's like. Sorry, I love that scene so much. Like, she's like perfectly stiff, but her voice is doing like the exact perfect performance of like acting stressed out, like performatively for Rod. She's like, oh, I don't know, and like sounds like she like you can imagine what he probably thinks she's doing physically, like
right.
Like stressing out, but she's like stiff as a board right there. It's like it's insane. Like,
I would have loved a little bit more cutting between the two. Like, as she's talking, we cut to Rod so we can try to imagine what she would be doing if we believed her. But yeah, I don't know what this has to do with anything, but I think that shows her voice talent as well. I don't think keeping a straight face is a requirement of a voice actor, but her not showing any emotion while changing her voice to match the fear she's supposed to be emulating from Chris missing is just dope and freaky as all hell.
Yeah, like I don't think there's like any other villain. Like, there's a lot of weird things that villains do to make them like feel creepy, but I don't think that is something that any other villain has done. At least none that I can think of. Like a lot of times you'll get the like understated performance, and it's like, oh, this person's really creepy because like they're just like, sometimes you get the like villain that's angry all the time and they're scary because of that, or the one that's like you can just feel them bubbling under the surface, like a Hannibal Lecter who's like scary because they're so quiet. And this is like, it's almost like that turned up a notch.
Yeah.
Of like physically acting like robotic, but her voice is like, it's almost like she's an AI in in just that scene. Like, and it's also like like not even just that scene, like her throughout the entire movie, the layers you see on like her kind of trying to like gaslight Chris throughout, like you can kind of see her clocking like, okay, how do I improvise in this moment once you know, but the first time it plays exactly as she's intended, like she the character is intending it to play, that she's just reacting organically.
Yeah, she cracks a lot of jokes at things he's suspect of, and then he ends up dropping the suspicion because she kind of annoys him in those moments.
Right, she like almost gets him to gaslight himself.
Yeah,
in a way. She'll be like, "Wait, I'm concerned," and he's like, "No, forget about it." Like she's playing like 4D chess with like just these tiny little reactions.
Yeah, because like that's what sends him out to have the cigarette, right?
I think so.
And that's what's when he meets the mom and goes, and that's how the whole thing starts, right? So it's very interesting because I don't know how much of it's like, I guess that's Peele's intention, but how much of it is like, did they plan that whole thing? Like, was the mom staged down there to have her tea and they were talking like, all right, make him angry and send him down? Or is it just like, she just happened to have her tea and she sprung on the moment?
Well, I don't know that it is, because doesn't he like wake up in the middle of the night to go have his cigarette? I don't think that's right after their talk. I don't think so. But I mean, I'm sure there's some kind of design in there. Clearly they're bringing him there with intention of body snatching him. So like the mom isn't awake downstairs by accident.
Yeah, and they use the smoking as like a consistent thing with him. It's like, oh, he's a smoker. Oh.
Right, but then again, like now that I'm thinking of it, how did they know he was going to go outside? Maybe they didn't, and they were just waiting for the right moment, and that was the first opportunity. I don't know.
I mean, with as crazy as they are, do you think the mom was just down there for hours?
I could see it, or just cameras,
Yeah. Oh yeah, the cameras.
Right. Well, he's also out there for a little bit, and like Georgina and Walter are both like kind of out. Like he's doing his exercises, which I, I don't know. That I felt like when I first saw that, I was like, oh, that's some kind of weird like him patrolling the yard.
Right.
Because nobody sprints like that, like the way he does.
Yeah, with that form,
especially
there's a clear reason as to
in
why
his
he lost to
whole ass
Jesse
gardener
Owens.
outfit.
Yeah.
Like,
If he was wearing that outfit when racing Jesse Owens, there's a reason he lost.
oh, real quick, this was something I found in the script. There was a line that got cut from him right before he shoots himself at the end. He says, "I never beat Jesse Owens' time," because it's supposed to.
Oh
be
yeah, Peele
the
said he
same
took that
guy.
out because it sounds cartoonish, or he thought it sounded cartoonish.
Yeah, I think it was good to take it out, but it was still a cool thing to find.
Yeah. Real quick, going back to rewatchability, even after it's revealed the Armitages are evil, they're still dropping hints. Like on the TV, for example, when I think it's when Rod calls her? When he's watching TV while searching Andre Hayworth, the TV says it says a mind is a terrible thing to waste, which is getting to it's still like foreshadowing the whole mind transfer thing, because we at that point we still don't know what the hell like Chris is in for. So and also another fun fact, that was Jordan Peele's voice as well, the guy on the TV, that was him. You're welcome.
Did you guys ever look into the meaning of Armitage?
I knew it for a while and then forgot.
I never knew it. I was just like, oh, I wonder if this is anything. But it's a topographic name from Middle English, derived from Old French, and it's a derivative of hermit. And this family, they're literal hermits. They're just living inside these bodies.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
I feel like that can't be an accident. So.
No way.
No, definitely not.
I just thought it was the last name of the dude who played Thorin in the Hobbit movies. That's literally the first thing I thought of when I heard it in the movie.
I have a few fun facts sprinkled throughout, but here's another one. A lot of people think Rose eating the cereal and milk separately.
I've heard that.
They thought that was like intentional, and Peele just admitted that was just like to show how weird she is, to be honest.
He was like, I just thought that's
into
something that like a crazy person would do.
Yeah, but people saw it as a race thing.
I heard that from we've all had him, former guest on the show David Greenberg, mention that in our screenwriting 1 class.
Yeah, and
I was like, whoa! Like because I had seen it like I think that was like pretty recently after I first saw it. And I was like, oh man, like I can't believe now I can't believe that's accidental, because it's like so specific.
I mean, it is strange. Like, if people didn't read it as a race thing, that would still be strange as hell. Who eats dry cereal like that and then drinks the milk after?
Yeah.
I eat dry cereal, but I don't drink milk almost ever. So,
yeah.
I don't know where that puts me on that spectrum, but...
Half.
Yeah, I only eat my cereal dry.
Okay, well, no, now you're
weird,
up there. You only eat it dry, Evan?
I hate soggy cereal.
Okay,
I think
just
it's
eat it
disgusting.
real fast.
No. No, I think it's disgusting.
That's fair. Do we have anything else for rewatchability or planting details? Anything else you guys wanna mention, like any lines stand out?
I think the comedy helps a lot with the rewatchability.
For sure.
And I'm not sure that certain horror films like we named that have come since Get Out, like as much as Hereditary has gotten its praise and Toni Collette kills that role, I just don't ever find myself wanting to rewatch it. But there's something about that connection between Chris and Rod that it's okay. Like, you're just in safe hands, which is nice in a horror film.
Right.
I don't know. It added like a cushion that allows for some nice rewatchability for me, because I like that comedy. I like that soft spot to it.
That one scene really made me dislike those cops, though, where they didn't believe him. I mean, he did. Yeah. He was pretty dumb and going off the rails and mentioning the sex slave thing, but like, she didn't even take his like friend missing seriously. It didn't seem like so. It was. But if it was his son, no.
But
we gotta
also,
find him.
Is that far off?
What?
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot
Oh,
of
are you saying like is
media.
it unrealistic?
Yeah, I don't think it's that unrealistic. You
Mm,
know?
mm, yeah.
Yeah, well, especially like when I think he kind of like if we're taking it like just in context of the movie, like he does kind of make it sound ridiculous
Yeah.
to the point that like they could write him off as like, all right, this guy's just nuts and delusional.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if he toned it down, like then that might like hit differently. But I think it still could be like I think there is a question of is that realistic that like law enforcement wouldn't do anything about it or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can read it either way and like there's an effective meaning to it.
Yeah. Let's weave this into I meshed these two topics, genre and humor, but hiding hints and the foreshadowing within the humor. So, for example, there's mentioning Rod again. There's lines thrown in by Rod that turn out to be true. Like at one point while he's talking on the phone with Chris, he says, maybe they're being hypnotized. And then Chris laughs it off, and Rod continues and distracts from the line he just said by getting into the sex slave thing. But, like, there's hints. It feels like half the lines leading up to the reveal are hints. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many that you miss upon even the second viewing. Like, there was another example I thought of, like the grandfather, the gardener running at Chris and then turning immediately. I just thought it was funny, and that was actually turned into like an internet challenge for like a week or something, where people just run straight and then try to turn as hard as they could, but a lot of people ended up slipping and hurting themselves. Like I just laughed that off, but that was to the Jesse Owens thing and the whole running thing, or just literally anything weird said or done by the white people in the black people's bodies. I don't think there's a word for that, so I'm just calling that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering how to like make that shorter too, but I don't think there is a way to do it.
The body snatched and the body snatchers. For example, Logan grabbing Chris's fist bump at the party.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you think, man, this dude is just weird. Like, does he know what a fist bump is? And he tries to handshake the fist bump. Like, I played that off as, well, I personally, like, laughed that off. Like, okay, this guy's, I don't know what's wrong with him. Or the gardener scene, again, when he's talking to Chris. Evan, you were talking about the laugh, but I was thinking about the lines in particular where he was, like, referring to Rose as a real doggone keeper. My brother and I laugh at that line all the time, but, like, he's referring to his granddaughter, which, if you think about it that way, it's still strange, but I just think there's a lot that's hidden within humor or humoristic elements within this movie that keep you distracted from the fact that you're getting hints as to what's to come. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's especially true with Rod because,
Mm-hmm.
like, when he is rambling to Chris, like, a lot of what he's saying is off the mark. But like you said, he's right. His basic take on it is pretty much accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's kind of, like, in his own way, like, he's basically trying to affirm Chris. Like, Chris is like, that's weird, right? And he's like, yeah, that's weird. Like, that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah.
And they just, like, let him just ramble. I think I read a lot of what he said was ad-libbed.
Wow. So that's why he was funny in this and not in Space Jam 2.
Oh, did you also watch that last night?
You watched that? Yes, I did. That's crazy. What do we think this genre is? It's definitely not comedy, because it's not, well, it's evident it's not comedy. But I think it's definitely horror. But not because you're terrified of what's happening on screen. I think it's because you're scared for Chris, if you give a crap about him. Or you should be. I'm going to let you guys answer that, and then I have a follow-up question.
I completely agree. I think it's horror. I don't know. I'm kind of like, it's an interesting line horror movies, especially good ones, tend to walk the balance of like not being terrified because what's on screen,
Mm-hmm.
but because you give a crap about the character. Because when I think about like what makes the original Halloween so chilling. Like the first 45 minutes, Michael doesn't do jack. Like he's just staring, and it's just long shots of teenage girls walking in suburbia. But it's
Yep.
so uncomfortable because of that stalking aspect. So I feel like this similarly has that thing where when it's the auction and everything, and you understand something about this is wrong the first time you're watching it. You just don't know what yet because you can't or as a normal person, preferably, you can't fathom that this would be going down. But once it goes down, it's like holy shit, and then it goes full horror really
Right.
fast.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard the genre debate about this since it first came out. Like, I feel like nobody has. I haven't heard anyone define, like, is it X genre? Because, yeah, it's not really funny enough to be a comedy. And it's, like, it doesn't feel like a traditional horror movie. But, yeah, I would put it more in horror than comedy. But really, I feel like neither of those really work because it's definitely not a drama either. Like it's too supernatural and weird to be a drama. So it's kind of its own thing. Like Sorry to Bother You, I feel like is the movie that is most similar to it genre wise, where like that's not really a horror movie, but it's just really weird and like really trippy for a good chunk of it. I'm not gonna say exactly how for spoilers.
Yeah, I still gotta watch it.
And I'm sure there's other ones like even I was thinking today, like even Apocalypse Now almost feels like it's almost a similar genre where it's like it's grounded in reality enough that like it's doing dramatic things and like having themes like a drama sometime, like the way that dramas tend to more than genre movies, but it's also clearly not trying to be realistic. And it's just like it's not necessarily scary, it's just like intensely weird and people are given like off the wall performances. I don't know if I'm off base with that Apocalypse Now comparison, but I feel like I would liken it more to that than say like The Conjuring. Although I haven't seen The Conjuring, so maybe I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
It's interesting because The Conjuring, well, that's a whole thing because then you're getting into paranormal horror, and then you get supernatural, and that's when it gets weird because supernatural is where like this line walks because like horror is like birthed out of this weird thing. I forget. Have any of you had
No.
Yvonne Leach at Drexel? She does a lot of the TV and genre classes. I had her for sci-fi and I had her for another one, but she like
Wait, does she do Supernatural?
yeah.
I think I had her for that. I took that class. I think she was the one
Yes.
who did it.
And we just talked about this a lot too, because there's like this weird thing with like Alien too, where it's like, is it sci-fi? Is it horror? What is this line that we walk with genre? And I don't know. With Get Out, I definitely feel the horror because it's like horrific, but I agree, like it plays also as a drama. Like it's not, and it doesn't have that same like the feel you get with Conjuring, or even I was thinking about this how like before Get Out and a few other horror films, there was such a need in horror to have like a very clear antagonist. Like you needed to have your Michael Myers, you needed to have
Right.
some force that you hated, but they don't have that in Get Out. Like you have the family, but you don't have that singular thing. And like the most singular thing is racism.
Yeah, I was gonna say hate racism in this movie. Yes.
Yeah. And I
Right,
thought
but
that
like
was
the
interesting.
manifestation of it is like the Armitages come off as just regular people at first. Like there's nothing supernatural about them specifically at first. So I feel like that maybe plays into it too, where it's like at a certain point we can kind of start seeing them maybe similar to like a monster in a horror movie, but it's definitely not like that initially. Initially they're just like regular seeming people. So
Maybe that's the horror.
yeah, maybe it is. Maybe that's part of it. I think that really is part of it because
I
like
definitely
that's
think-
part of the reveal with Rose.
Yeah.
is that like she seems like woke and just normal, like not in on the whole weirdness that's happening. Like I even the first time I saw it, I think I considered like, oh, is she hypnotized too? Because she seems to be missing everything that Chris is noticing that's weird. Maybe she's like maybe there's a reason she's like oblivious to it, but then there's the reveal that, oh no, she's actually maybe even the mastermind of everything with it. Yeah. So I think that is part of the horror, is that they do come off, and especially her, as so non-threatening to start.
Yeah. It's interesting because from a non-threatening to completely unhinged, she just puts her hair in a ponytail.
Yeah. Gets rid of the bangs.
It's terrifying.
Oh, man. So we seem to agree that it's horror. What type of horror would you say? Psychological? Or a new type of horror, like racial horror? I asked myself if that exists, and I looked it up. Apparently it does. There's only 11 movies I found, this being one. Other honorable mentions: Night of the Living Dead, Antebellum, Tales from the Hood, Eve's Bayou, and then...
Tales from the Hood is good.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone here has seen that. It's very underrated.
Yeah, and then some other weird ones, like Blackula and Blade 2. Both classified as racial horror.
Blade 2, but not 1 or 3.
Nope. The second one specifically.
About that too. I was like, okay.
I haven't seen any of them, so I can't really say.
I thought for sure the first. When I saw Blade, I was like, at least one of them.
Maybe, I forget which one this was in. Maybe it was Blade 2, where one of the white vampires asked Blade, "Can you blush?" Maybe that's what made it racial horror. I don't know. Blade 2 is up there with Get Out in racial horror, so it's...
Also never heard of Blackula, but that's an amazing name.
Yeah, it's a old movie. Also, I saw The Help on there and 12 Years a Slave.
Are those horror?
Racial
those are
horror.
like historical fiction.
I don't... Listen, man, you gotta ask Google. Call your homies up, bro. I don't know, but those are on there as well. Listen, I don't have any... I just had the list. I don't have anything further to say on it. I just wanted to let you guys know that I think it's a thing. But I think this is definitely the best out of them. I haven't seen Antebellum, though, so I don't know about that. But
that one's newer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that from, the past year? Because I think I saw trailers for that.
Movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was another one that Jordan Peele was, loosely attached to. I feel like I remember seeing his name in the trailer.
He bought everybody food, and they gave him a credit.
He bought everyone food. Yeah, I think you could even, racial horror could be a specific genre there. Maybe you could even, expand it out into, I almost want to say, social commentary horror, but I feel like there's a better word.
I feel like also that could be perceived as redundant, because the best horror is usually social commentary.
It's very true.
Yeah, or at least rooted in, maybe it's not necessarily something societal, but maybe it's just emotional. There's some kind of I can't think of an example.
To it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's horror movies that I feel like I've heard of that just kind of deal with the whole concept of grief in context of the horror genre, grieving a dead relative or something.
Like Hereditary.
Maybe that was the one. I never got all the way through that, so...
Mm-hmm.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, I probably should give it another shot, because I hear it's really good, but I think my rental ran out before I could finish it or something. I think there is kind of a trend, because, again, Sorry to Bother You, I feel like is the thing that I've seen that is most similar to this in terms of, genre blending with social commentary, because, you could definitely file Sorry to Bother You, I think, under racial horror, but it definitely expands beyond that into commentary on capitalism and stuff like that, and the horror, and definitely makes capitalism the source of the horror in that movie. So I feel like you could almost call it societal horror, as a broader genre that it also fits into, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we just need maybe if there's more of these that are getting made, we'll start to figure out, because I don't think you can call even 11 movies is that even enough to call it a genre, or is that just 11 movies?
Right.
Maybe there's got to be a certain number before it can really become its own genre.
20?
Maybe, I don't know. Because I guess I guess you could call it a subgenre because like it still would
Okay,
fall
yeah.
under horror.
Right.
Like it's a subgenre
Right.
of horror, so maybe it is enough. Although again,
Yeah.
I don't know that The Help is a horror movie.
No,
So
no.
I don't know if there even are 13 like you were saying.
That's so funny that that's there.
Anything else for genre or humor?
I mean, just speaking to, I don't want to like misinterpret her words or anything, but Carla put this under most overrated, and she wasn't like active
Wait, Get
with
Out?
us on. Yeah, so for the decade recap, she put that, and you can go to like hear her exact thoughts. I think it's on part 1 of those 2 podcasts that we
Okay.
did on that, and she wasn't like on the call with us, so her like we didn't bounce off her points or anything, but I think I remember she said something like the comedy she thought, and she's a big horror fan, I know, and she I think saw it like post hype and said something like the comedy kind of undercuts it at the end. I think she was mostly talking about the ending. I don't really want to say more to not like misinterpret what she said, but I think maybe there is debatably a genre confusion there, and I think she was
Yeah.
kind of getting at that, especially like because I'm somebody who like I think this is maybe the first horror movie I've seen, and even now it's maybe one of like less than 10. I don't really watch horror movies, and she
Same.
really watches horror movies. So if you come at this as a horror fan, this is probably like gonna read different to you because it's like not going too hard with the horror. At least I don't feel like it is. And
It
the fact
isn't.
that the fact that it ends with a joke basically,
Yeah.
like I think that could really rub people the wrong
Confuse
way. And
it.
like I like the ending, but I can see how people would bump on it that like it just ends with a couple of good one-liners from Rod. Again, I like it, but I think it does. I think that's part of the reason why it reads as a comedy, because it ends with that. Like, I don't think there's enough jokes in the rest of the movie that you could think of it as a comedy. But the fact that that's what it leaves you with is maybe why we've even like put that genre into consideration when talking about it.
I totally agree because, and we're gonna get to the ending, but before that, just to go to our good friend Aristotle, like if you want to chalk up genre into tragedy or comedy, like that ending made the line very clear that this wasn't a tragedy, and if
Yeah.
it had ended the way it could have ended, then that tragic ending would have fed the horror vibe so much stronger. I totally agree with that. But as a big horror fan, a self-professed, and I like to write horror too, the most. It's interesting because I think the horror in this is it's subliminal. It's not overt, which I think coming off of 2000s, 1990s, 1980s horror films, the horror was very overt. So I think it took a lot of audience training to like take that step back and get at maybe something that is boiling under the surface, because that's definitely something you see more in the 70s with horror. And I think this is more of a return to that. Greenberg calls it art house horror, which is, I think, a really just quick way to refer to it. And I think it makes sense. 'Cause it's just like higher brow, like not dumb slasher, man who cannot die will chase you with knife until you die, really easy formula, but something that's trying to get at something. Which is, I think, what we're seeing with like It Follows and A24's Boom.
I like that idea, like, even as a non-horror fan, like, I think some of my resistance to the horror genre is that, like, I feel like it's so easy to distance myself from the content and not be scared, because I'm just like, a dude with knives on his hands is not going to come chase me. That's not a realistic fear that I have. But if you do root it, like, this is going to sound weird, but I feel like the scariest movie I've ever seen is The Big Short. Maybe not the scariest, but up there, just because like that kind of, first of all, it's a real thing, and it's a real thing that could happen again. Like it's an existential kind of horror that is tapping into it. And The Big Short is not branded at all as a horror movie, but like when I watch scenes from that, I'm just like, oh god, this is like, this could happen at any time, and it did. So I think the idea of rooting horror in something realistic like a financial crash, or like racism, or like capitalism in Sorry to Bother You, or even like class differences. If I mean, Parasite's not a horror movie, but I feel like it is kind
It
of
teeters
like,
on that thriller horror line really well, though.
yeah, like it's a, for a drama, it's a very bloody movie. Like, not to spoil anything, but like there are moments in that feel more akin to a horror slasher movie than like an Oscar bait drama. So like the idea of taking this, I guess, existential or societal anxiety, like in whatever form you want it to take, like whatever theme you want to go into, and rooting the horror in that, I feel like is going to be way more upsetting. I find it's a lot more upsetting, even as like a non-horror fan. Like, those are the things that upset me the most and just leave me feeling terrible after I watch them, is stuff that's like just hits so hard at like reality that it's like painful to think about.
Mm-hmm.
If you're wanting to scare the audience, like, you can get jump scares and that's fine. I feel like that's like fun horror. That was why I enjoyed A Quiet Place, because it was fun to get scared in that one. But if you want to like actually upset them, you can do it in a way that's much deeper, but also can kind of like be socially, I'm trying to think of a word other than good, just like educational, I guess, and make people look inward or outward depending on what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have anything to add. You guys summed that up really well. Do we want to get into the? Well, I lump these three things together: race and playing with expectations, alternate ending, and party scene. I promise you that won't make any sense for me lumping those together. But let's talk about the alternate ending and connecting that with horror and everything else, all of that. You guys have both seen the alternate ending, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of. I didn't watch the actual scene, but I watched it. The Blu-ray I have, it had it with Jordan Peele.
Yeah, that's what I just saw. Yeah.
I just watched that. I didn't watch like the actual scene itself.
That's fine.
I've seen the alternate ending, the police station conversation, him not killing her, him killing her, any variant of this. I've watched it. I've watched him talk about it a lot. I think he's so articulate in the way he describes his process making in this, because like, I don't want to like misquote him, but it pretty much came down to like, when the police car pulled up, that was when the horror started and ended for the audience. Like, it didn't even matter who was driving it. The audience knew, oh shit, this situation's not ending well. And that was the gut punch. And the fact that he was able to subvert that expectation while still being true to like the story he crafted, I really enjoy. And it's such a not gut punch. It's just a breath of fresh air when you see Rod, and you're just like, thank you so much.
Yep. In the
This
theater.
is exactly what I needed, because like it says in the notes, then it's no secret there's a lot of shit going on. And like, it would have been maybe a little too real and too depressing if after all of that Chris lost. But that is the world.
In the movie theater, I remember hearing groans, gasps, and like verbal no's when the cop lights flash on Chris. And like those people, I knew exactly what it meant. But there were even more gasps, or exhales and sighs once we realized it was Rod. Yeah, I watched the commentary at the end of the Amazon Prime movie. Jordan Peele said he switched it once he realized racism was being addressed at the time, and he think we needed a hero at the end of this movie, not a martyr. He originally had that original ending because he feels like that gut punch, as David mentioned, would have gotten people to do something about what was currently going on, the simmering racism, as Peele put it. It was also about Chris beating his inner demon by saving Georgina. When he says he beat it, I didn't know what the hell he meant when I originally saw that, but I'm glad I have context now. He means he beat the inner demon, the thing that had been chasing him, leaving his mom to die, by saving Georgina. That's not what I would have thought at all. I was going to ask later which ending should have been the theatrical one, but David seems set in his
I think
answer.
he made the right choice.
Yeah. Okay.
If anyone disagrees, I would love to hear, but I just think it's a hard choice, but I think he made the right choice.
I have an answer. I'm gonna let Evan answer first.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because it changes the like tone of it so much that I feel like he couldn't have made that decision lightly. So I kind of don't want to like I kind of want to give like both endings are good as my answer, but at the same time they're so different in how you read it that like I kind of feel like there is a right one for him to choose. And like yeah, like he said in the commentary, like, and I knew vaguely what the alternate ending was before going into it. I knew it like actually was the cops at the end. I did not know about the like scene 6 months later in jail that happened after until I watched it a couple nights ago. But it was interesting to hear him talk about how he said the term I remember him using was like he wanted to like wake people up from the post-racial lie that was like prevalent at the time. He was like, I wrote it during the Obama years when people were like, oh, racism's kind of over. And then he said like between writing it and releasing it, he said that he felt like that was becoming less of a prevalent mindset that people had. So he didn't think he needed that like wake up call ending like he was talking about. And I really don't know because like, I mean, all movies are kind of like influenced and do influence the time that they're made in. So I personally like the theatrical ending that we got. So I guess I'm gonna say, if I had to pick, I'd say that one. But I really don't think there's. If I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna say there's not a right one. They're just both really, I guess, powerful in their own ways. Because it is kind of nice to have that basically happy ending. It's not like a happy ending, but it's not like insanely tragic.
Especially for a
it's
black
a win.
character in a horror movie.
Yes.
Right. And like, you know, in both endings, he does survive, but in one of them, it's not exactly like, it's definitely not a win. So
The other one's just it's the crowd, please. It's finally the moment the audience is with him because the audience is Rod. Rod has that great line where he says, "I told you not to go."
yeah.
It's perfect.
Well, and the thing that I feel like really makes me feel like you can like the theatrical ending that we got can still kind of be the right one is that you still have that moment like we were talking about where everyone's like, oh shit, he's caught, because that's like everyone thinks that when the cops show up. So you still have a moment where like you basically let the audience imagine the alternate ending.
That's very true.
You almost get both. Like, of course, they don't imagine like the exact scene,
Right.
but they basically imagine like, oh shit, it could have gone down very differently, and then you get the sigh of relief. So he almost like got to have it both ways with the way he did it.
I watched him on a talk show. I forget which one, but he literally said that. He was like, once he realized that when he watched it with like the test screening that the audience got hit when the police pulled up, he was like, oh, I can have my cake and eat it too. And he's just like, very rarely does that happen in this job. So he's like, I kind of wanted to take that too. And I was like, that's very funny and very real. But yeah, and I think it's a testament to his craftsmanship and his job well done if at the end of the film that symbol is enough for them to get the whole picture.
Yep.
Yeah. It also, like, the real ending, or not, I don't know what we want to call it. The theatrical ending we got also has possibly the best line in the movie from Rod. So, like, there's that. That was one of my favorite things. I didn't even know what the TSA were before I saw this movie. Then I was like, well, maybe
Now you
they're...
know they handle shit.
Yeah, they handle shit. It's what they do.
I think the original should have been kept. This movie has done a lot for the horror genre, but I don't think I can say the same about racism. Past few years, that simmering, quote-unquote, racism, as Peele put it, began to boil with this well, in more recent years, this was in 2017, so more recent years, with this past election, I'll say, I honestly don't feel like anything has changed, especially when it comes to things like blatant racism, such as cop killings. I honestly wonder how many people that saw this movie in the theater are aware of the original ending, or how many people let those cop lights flashing go over his head and what that would have meant for him. I honestly just wonder what would have been different in general, how that would have impacted people. Like, you obviously can't, we don't know, but yeah, I wonder how this movie would be received if that was, like, would it be more critically acclaimed, less critically acclaimed? Like, I have no idea, but I think the original should have been kept, because I feel like now we need that gut punch more than ever, but like at the time, I don't remember what was going on, but yeah, that's just my take.
I think one thing that would have probably changed if we got the original ending as the theatrical one is I would anticipate people will be less inclined to rewatch it because it ends on a downer. I think the fact that people left the theater with like laughing and being like, oh, like big sigh of relief.
That's very true.
I think that probably increased people's inclination to go rewatch it. But, you know, it kind of maybe lets you all, it's kind of letting the audience off the hook. It's like, ooh, okay, everything ended up all right, basically.
But at the end of the day, that's kind of horror. Like, that's the genre.
Right.
It's kind of like
exactly.
getting waterboarded. Like, you have Chris is the final guy. Like, if he was to die, it would be, I don't know, as a horror fan, I would feel like my toes got stepped on. Or something.
Right, but in the alternate ending, he doesn't die.
Yeah, he doesn't die.
He is alive.
I mean, his life,
his
freedom dies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Evan.
Right. It's more, but it's a symbolic that he is literal. Like he does literally survive the horror villain of the movie.
It's not a win. So there's not you. I don't think you would feel the want to rewatch it because it's like a roller coaster that ends in a car crash.
I mean, just speaking for myself personally, I know movies with downer endings are ones that, like, even ones that I really like, are ones that I'm, like, less inclined to go back to.
Until that moment comes and it, like, hits you, and you're like, all right, now this is the time for me to really feel this specific emotion that's going to wreck me. Because I've had those watches, too. You know, like, Internal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where it's like, you can watch it, like, once every 5 years because you know it's going to destroy you. Like, I could see this movie doing that if it had kept the original ending.
Yeah.
I wonder if they could have done, like, a Clue thing where, depending on, different theater, different ending.
That would have been cool.
Yeah.
I think that might have really been the best of both worlds.
That would have.
Because then that immediately starts a dialogue about, like, how do you perceive it based on what version you saw.
Right. And that would have gotten both. Yeah, he could have had even more. He could have gotten the second cake and eaten that cake as well.
He could have got a whole bakery.
That is the whole bakery. I think that would have actually, like, in reality, I think that would have sparked a much more insightful conversation around this movie. Because, like, it's definitely not shying away from its themes at all and shying away from, like, its social commentary on racism. But, like we're saying, it does kind of feel like that ending lets the audience off the hook a little bit.
Right.
It ended okay for him. So, like, yeah, I do hear that, what you were saying earlier, Jelani, that, like, because racism is still such a huge problem, and this movie is, like, it's not acting like it's not, but it doesn't end with a really harsh reminder of that. That does, like, it, like, literally, I feel like the effect that has on the moment you walk out the door of the theater, like, that matters to how this movie was received.
And I think it would have been even better if he never came out and said which one was the original ending.
But at the same time, he shot both. So, like, I don't know that the original label of it, to me, that doesn't feel like it matters so much.
No, I'm saying in the scenario where it's like depending on which theater you're on, depends on which ending you get. I'm saying, like, I feel like
Okay.
it would have been
Right, because then it doesn't taint the two. It's just like, this is one, this is the other.
you choose which one is the real ending.
I feel like that's, especially like our guest on the last show, Max, he and I have talked a little bit about, because he's a big gamer, he's talked a lot about games that have extremely different endings. Like, there's some games that apparently have like 25 different endings depending on how you play it.
Right.
They're all like slight variations on each other. So that's like, and I don't typically think of endings like that because I am a movie person, and movies get to basically have one ending, except for cases like Clue or ones that are debated like this. So I always think like the concept of an alternate ending at all, I feel like is like, I understand it. I understand the inclination to shoot both, but at the same time, endings are so insanely important that like I personally can't imagine writing something and not knowing like if I was going to change something about the ending that I wanted like an option of, it would probably be something kind of small. I think like it would definitely be smaller than the change for Get Out's two endings. But I guess just like that idea that a story could theoretically end so many different ways, and like I said with video games, like everyone can play the same game, do everything up to the same point, and get 25 different outcomes.
Yep.
Like, the outcome that you pick really matters. So
Does that kind of cover I guess that goes under the alternate ending topic, if we have anything else to say about that.
I'm just so mad they didn't do what you said. Like, did no one think of that? Like, this is a $1 billion industry. Did no one think, hey guys, what if we just did the Clue thing? Like, oh my god, that's a genius idea.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
No, I'm like pissed. Like, you ruined my life. Like, that's I need to like get famous and just be like Jordan Peele. There's this guy, Jelani. He really fucked up Get Out. Let me tell you why. Distribution, man.
Everyone else, when they get a time machine, is gonna go like do the basic stuff, like the Kill Hitler scenarios.
Right.
We're gonna go back and tell Jordan Peele to release 2 endings for Get Out theatrically.
Like, oh my god, that would have sparked such a conversation.
Yeah. Oh well. Race playing with expectations and or the party scene. Go.
Well, which one are we doing? Because I'm gonna start very differently depending on which one we do.
Let's start with the party scene.
Okay. Yeah, I really wanted to talk about the party scene because I feel like that was like, especially talking again about rewatchability, I feel like that was the scene that got the most meaning from it, like on rewatching it, because the first time you see it, you just think all the party guests are being insensitive and saying all these things to Chris and not really hearing themselves the way that he hears them and that like the audience is supposed to hear them. But then you go back and rewatch it and you hear like, oh, they're all trying to figure out if they want to bid on him.
Right.
And like saying these different things like, oh, how's your swing? Like, can I get my golf swing back?
Yeah.
Is he better in bed? And the dude's like creepily like, like that dude, that guy is so creepy. And I don't know the lady's name, but her husband.
Oh, yeah.
So like that was, I feel like I think that was the first like extra layer that I noticed. The scene that like really alerted me to like how deep the layers were in it, because I think I watched it like 4 times or something over like a couple of years, and every single time I got something new that I had missed in it before. And on like a bigger level, I feel like that scene was like, I don't know about the first, but one of the first times in any movie where I like saw my own racism reflected back at me in a story. Like there's a kind of comfortable distance that I feel like is created in a lot of movies or just stories in general that are about race, where it's like set in the distant past or like the bigotry is so extreme that it's like literally the bar for like what counts as being racist in X movie is like lynching somebody or like somebody like throwing a racial slur around.
Right.
Like sometimes that's the bar. And with this, it like the fact that the bar is lowered, I feel like is so much more effective because I was like I can like most people living today can watch like a movie about slavery and be like, well, I mean, slavery's been gone the whole time I've been alive, like, and not feel implicated.
Right.
But I watched this scene and I was like, I've probably said something like this at some point without realizing it. So I need to work on that. And like I feel like there's been other stuff since this that has also had that effect, both more so like not in movies, but there's a few scenes probably or just like stories in general.
Knives Out has a really good scene about it. Not to like shout out another movie, but like Knives Out.
Well, we just talked about it, so like that was only 2 episodes ago. Yeah, Knives Out I think is are you talking about the will reading scene?
Oh, that scene. But I was thinking of the scene where like they all get where she's from wrong. They're always saying,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a scene. They kind of
But
do
yeah,
that
but
throughout.
the scene
So,
I'm
but
thinking
yeah,
about specifically is the Jamie Lee Curtis's husband, and he like just calls her over to because it's when they're all talking about like Trump pretty much, but they don't name Trump, and he just like subtly hands her the plate without looking at her, like she's the help, and like she's just like grabs it, and they call her over here or over there just to be like a number about like your family came over here legally, right? You did it right?
Right.
And like they don't even give a
Yeah.
fuck about what she has to say. They don't let her talk, and then of course that's the big reveal at the end is nope, that's a lie.
yeah, I hadn't thought of Knives Out as an example, but I think yeah, that's absolutely maybe the closest parallel to the party scene, at least of stuff I'm thinking of right now. But I know the party scene, like, I'm sure there's been other stuff that's come before this that have also. I actually think there's a scene or an episode of Atlanta that I think came out like a year earlier than Get Out that I saw later that kind of like
Which one?
did something similar. I'm not remembering it well enough to say, but I know I like thought of that when I did watch it. But like for me personally, this was the first scene that I feel like had that effect where I was like, I felt called out and was like, oh, I should do better with this because I probably do it.
Because I'm
Yeah,
waiting for
Rosemary's
season 3.
Baby had a really good one for like objectification of women because there's like a weird scene where it's just like a bunch of old dudes and her, and it's like her husband pretty much selling her to the devil because she has like the ideal body.
Oh,
So,
no.
it's interesting. And I know Jordan Peele has talked about that being an influence, so.
Yes. I saw, like, on the rewatches, I saw them, like, they're obviously all testing Chris physically to see if they want his body, but I also saw, like, it having a connection to slavery. Like, they're testing Chris's body to see how much they're willing to pay for a black man. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it was a literal auction, right?
Right, exactly. It's like a slave auction. So, I had on the not so subtle racist tip, I had a roommate that, ironically enough, around the time when this movie came out, was obsessed with my body, saying I was wasting the potential. He believed that he was at a disadvantage physically and said if he had my body, he'd be training to do every day to do things with it, make it stronger. For example, learning how to jump higher or run faster. Not exactly along the same lines as like slight uncomfortable underlying racism, but I'm just noting I can understand the uncomfortability. Luckily, besides that example, I don't face that type of thing as much personally. Either that or I just don't notice it. I can't think of any specific examples, but I'm sure I've gone through it before. And I'm glad definitely glad this movie addresses it. And I'm sure not many people hold that mirror up to themselves like Evan admits that he realizes he's probably said stuff like that before. But yeah. It's a very important scene.
Well, I think it also like it's kind of a testament to why we need to have a big diversity of perspectives in the stories that we tell. Because I don't think I don't like, not to say that like people can't be reflective without outside influence, but like I don't think any white creator could have come up with the party scene
Exactly.
in a way that would make white people look introspectively like that. So like you need that outside perspective for there to even be an opportunity of it. And I think like to say that like any given group shouldn't talk about like I guess subgroup that they aren't part of, or like any kind of social issue, I don't think that's true. Like one movie that I think does a pretty good job of like giving a really insightful perspective on race from like a white perspective is American History X, where it looks at like white supremacy and like why it's kind of like a prevalent, or like depending on what time period you're talking about, like increasingly prevalent like ideology for people to follow. So like that's an example where like I think you would have to have some kind of knowledge of that group to really have that insight. But I think just in general, a lot of times you can't, like, you need the mirror held up to you by somebody who has an experience that's completely different from you in like just all areas. Like if we're talking like socioeconomic stuff, like I don't know that somebody from an affluent background could write Parasite. And I don't think Bong Joon-ho comes from like a super well-off family. So like I think it's just like a generally a reason why it's good to have like a good spectrum of voices telling stories.
Yeah, and I think a lot, so there's like the element of like there needs to be an honesty to the storytelling. You can tell when people, or specifically studios, will catch wind of a trend and then they'll bullshit it, and it's not authentic. And it's some movies have come out after Get Out that definitely fall into that category. But I think it's like you said, there's the authenticity and the honesty in Jordan Peele's writing and directing that just allows this to be what it is, because it's not supposed to on paper break the box office and take over the world and change the zeitgeist the way it did. It's not like a star-studded cast, it's not a big budget, it's a very low-key film in a very low-key setting, and it's just really good filmmaking.
Yeah. I mean, you have some notes on race and playing with expectations, but I thought that like kind of weaved into alternate ending and the party scene pretty well. So,
Talk about those things that I have at the top of the notes there. Yeah. Just before I get into that one, just going off of something that David said of like movies taking social trends and doing it badly. Really good video to look up about that. Woke Disney by Lindsay Ellis. It kind of breaks down. It's mostly about the way they do lean in feminism in like some of their, that's what she calls it. I don't know if that's like an official term, but it talks about that and like the live action reboots.
Like Mulan.
It was very it doesn't reference Mulan because it hadn't come out yet, but Mulan definitely deserves to be in that conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, like just something I've heard that Jordan Peele said was like he wasn't expecting to be allowed to make something that has like no good white character in it. Because like, again, talking about expectations, like we kind of get the like good white character with Rose for the first 3/4 of it. And then she turns out to be the most evil one of all of them.
right.
And then we even get another one with, what's his name? Stephen Root's character, the art
Right.
gallery owner. Because he's like the one guest at the party who like actually is like talking to Chris just as Chris and like seems to be understanding of him.
I never even realized that before you just... Damn. I didn't realize that there's no good white character in this movie. There's no good white side character, nothing like that. That's crazy.
Well, I don't think I know. I had to have it called out by somebody else. I forget who. I think it might have been like an interview with Jordan Peele, but I didn't notice it initially because it's not like super blatant about it.
Right.
Like I've never felt like it's saying that like white people are evil watching this. Like that never comes off as the subtext.
Nope.
But I think it does, like the fact that there are no redeemable white characters at the end of this does kind of add to the like making like white viewers feel complicit. And it's not saying like, it's not calling it out like you guys are evil. It's just like racism can look like a lot of things. So like saying you're not racist is not really looking at it the right way. I think that's like extrapolating a lot. I don't think it's like actively saying that, but it's also not giving any good white character to latch onto the way that I think almost any other movie that like is quote unquote about racism does. There's probably
always
some
one
other
savior.
exceptions. Yeah, like even in, we mentioned it before, The Help is a movie that very like Emma Stone is like the redeemable white character in that.
Yeah.
And like that was I just kind of like that it didn't racial horror. I just like that it doesn't feel the need to do that, just because I feel like it's annoying to do it, and it is less effective to do it. I appreciate so much more that it's like not worried about offending white viewers, even though it's not actively trying to at all.
Right.
If like
it's
if white people walked out of this movie, if like I don't think Jordan Peele would have cared if some white people walked out of this pissed.
Like, he'd probably make a joke about how they paid to go in.
Right, like I don't think he intended it either, but he's not shying away, so like I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point, and I think he's even conscious of it because we've referenced it, we've talked about it. We all want her to throw the keys. We all think she's doing good shit in the beginning, so like he definitely plays on the fact that throughout cinema, the Hays production code, like you literally couldn't see a movie until like 1962 that showed the police as not amazing people. Like the amount of propaganda that is just seeping in cinema is insane, and he's very conscious of it, and he's very honest about it, and I think it speaks volumes to the impact it has, and I really enjoy it because in any other movie, I mean, fucking Green Book won. That movie won how many years ago? And it should have won if it was 1990, but like 2019, no, that's ridiculous.
I still haven't seen it, but from what I heard, it did feel like such a movie of the past.
Like racism bad? Is that?
No, yeah, it was literally like my private school education that said racism ended with Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
It was very that.
So here's another random fun fact. At the end, there's irony with Chris being freed by picking cotton.
Yeah.
It's also from
from the chair.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
You thought he was in a field at some point, Evan?
I was like, wait, what? And I was thinking, you said ending. I was thinking like when they're out on the street. I'm like, what the cotton? Like, okay, but I remember now.
Yeah,
I remember now.
Is that it for the mashup of race, playing with expectations, alternate ending, and party scene? Have we said everything?
I had one quote from Daniel Kaluuya
go ahead.
about the party scene that I found today. He says, he's talking about, he says, "Oh, I've been in that party. Like that kind of racism that isn't seen as racism, that isn't seen as kind of like mainstream racism. It's just life, and to explore that is quite an uncomfortable conversation, and Jordan just spoke his truth. He cinematically articulated an experience that millions of people go through, and they are made to feel crazy for going through that, but he just said, no, actually, you're not crazy." Yeah, that was the whole thing. I just found that today. I don't think there was more to it. That's a good testament for why it's such a good scene. And one other thing, just in like a total craft perspective, like I like that there's an escalation to how uncomfortable the questions are for Chris. Like because it kind of crescendos in that point where the scene where he takes the picture of Lakeith Stanfield, like they get increasingly uncomfortable and increasingly hard to dodge. So I think that's just like, if you're trying to build tension in a scene, I think that's a good technique to take from that.
And then it freaking ends with when he goes upstairs and they all just go silent. Like that terrifying.
That was the biggest what the fuck moment when I watched it the first time. I was like, I was so lost.
I honestly still don't know what that means. Like, were they listening to see what he would like? didn't understand it was creepy as all hell. It worked, but what was the point in them all doing that?
Yeah, like what was the practical end to it? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is
Yeah, I think
very
it
unsettling.
just makes it. Yeah, it makes them read so much more as like a cult, because then it's just like all of these conversations they're having are
And
fake
malicious.
right now. Like, yeah, and malicious. One other thing I forgot to mention: there were some deleted moments in the party scene. I know I saw one of them in a deleted scene, and some of them were just in the script. Rose actually had some like much stronger reactions to the guests' comments in that scene. And I think it was a good idea to write them in and shoot them just in case, but I think the scene plays a lot better without them. I think it just like lets the uncomfortable moments play more strongly, and it's like kind of inconsistent for her to do that, especially because like a couple of them it's like after Chris walks away, so it doesn't make sense. But that was just a little thing that I found reading through the script.
It wouldn't play along with the gaslighting thing either. She was been doing so,
because she's not doing it performatively for his sake at that point.
I think the last topic is David's Jordan Peele's influences. You want to kick that off?
Sure. I'm just one of the things I found so curious about Jordan Peele's process in making this movie was just from a screenwriting perspective, like how do you get this insane thing that has so many layers on a page and make that so moving that it is able to be visualized and performed in such a way. And he has like a quote where he just said he just made the movie he wanted to see. And I think that's very interesting, especially as someone who's now leaving film school and is finishing up on what they're writing and then is hopefully going to get a job writing in the future. Just, it's like inspiring to me, and it's also just affirming that, like, you know, it's trends. The suits, they just follow trends, but as far as the story going, like, they don't know what's going down.
Right.
And as long as I stay true to that, maybe I'll tell something that means something to me one day, which is, I think, probably the most rewarding thing he'll get out of this, even besides the Oscar and all the everything else. Because, I mean, what a film. And to come out the gate like that, oof.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see what he did done often, so... Yeah, I don't think I have anything for this. Evan, did you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have come to believe in that idea of just write the movie you want to see. Like, I think writing, like you were saying, David, like just from something relatively personal to varying degrees is probably going to be the most valuable story that you can offer, rather than like trying to do something like that you think is going to have a specific impact. Like, I think you can hope for that. I know I've tried in the past, like trying to write a story specifically, like I want the audience to get this, like I want this to be the message that they get. And there's a degree to which you can influence that, but you can't control it as a writer. So like, if you write from something like true within yourself, I think you do actually maximize your chances of having a positive impact on your audience. And it does really feel like Jordan Peele did that here. Like, I don't think he's necessarily like imposing anything like any exact specific experience that he has had in this movie, but he is taking like a collective overall feeling that he's had. Like, I read something today where he talked about like when he wrote the sunken place scene, he like broke down crying because he had found like an image that spoke to him so much. You don't get that kind of evocative image when you're trying to imitate something else. So, and like just in terms of like writing well, like look at the trend that this started. We've been talking about it the whole time. Like, nobody expected this to make as much money or get as much acclaim as it did. And now it's created it's revitalized one genre and created another. Like, nobody expected that to happen. And I'm wondering, like, what is the next big trendsetter movie going to be? I have no idea. Nobody has any idea. It's just going to kind of have to come at the right time. When stuff comes out a year or more after you write it, you have no idea if it's going to be the right time. So I think, yeah, write the movie you want to see. That's a good lesson to take.
I'm gonna write Spider-Man 4 with Tobey Maguire.
I'm ready.
Do you want to see that? I'm gonna write the Hobbit movie that would have been good. That's the movie I want to see. I might actually write
like
that. Not to get made. I just want a good version of that movie to exist somewhere.
You're not writing Inception 2, Evan?
I'm writing the prequel TV series instead.
Gotcha. Was it Preception? Perception? Preception? Deception.
I hadn't. I mean, you can keep going if you want. It's all the memes. The memes have already beaten you on that game, Jelani. So like, go ahead and try. But anyway, yeah.
This time, I think going into dreams, they just get more real and real. More reality. I don't know how that works, but I'm sure you'll figure it out.
They go into the second level of reality. That low-key is going to be Nolan's next movie.
God damn it.
I don't know. I have no idea what his next movie is going to be. I just feel like he could go there.
Does everybody have any more points? This is action-packed is not the right word. Very informational, educational, enlightened episode. Yeah, that's better than action-packed. Any other points?
I don't think so. Although if we do have an action-packed episode, I don't know what that's going to look like. Because I think that implies you and me getting in a fist fight at the very least.
Lots of sound effects and cuts. Yeah. David?
Last thought, Lakeith is the best standout role in this movie.
Oh, for sure.
Hands down. And that's why he gets the title line.
He does get the title line.
That's
Him and Rod.
That's the name of the movie.
I think Rod... Does Rod say Get Out at some point, or does he just say that in subtext?
I think he says it in subtext.
He might have said, like, either you got to get out of there or you got to leave or something like that.
Yeah.
At some point. Word. Let's, Evan, you want to do the boilerplate?
Yeah, all right. So our next episode is going to be Dunkirk, another awards movie of 2017, and our first Nolan movie, technically. You can check out our YouTube channel. We've got video essays and old podcasts up there. It's going to be all of them eventually. I think Last Airbender Season 2 is the most recent one as of recording this.
Yes.
There should be a new video essay up there soon. Probably not as soon as this comes out, but within the next week or so.
Go subscribe. Hopefully. What's the YouTube thing? INT.analysis?
It's exactly the same as the podcast.
Right.
Just INT analysis, all caps.
Make sure you go
yeah. If you found
subscribe.
this, you there's gonna be a link in the show notes anyway, so you can just click on that.
Subscribe.
Yeah, we have merchandise with the logo, so you can find a link to our products in the show notes as well. We have a Patreon with episodes on the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, all glowing reviews, as I'm sure you can all guess.
Of course. Tens across the board.
10s across the board. That street dance scene is the GOAT.
Oh, man.
Street dance scene is actually the GOAT. But, Punch Me, I Bleed. Greatest line of dialogue ever written. And we also have new episodes an episode kind of 2 on the Kingsman movies. We've got the theatrical cut without our tangents and the director's cut with the tangents.
Yes.
That's all on there for $1 a month. Our logo's by Kelsey Hendry. You can follow the show on Twitter at INTAnalysis18. I am on Twitter at Davos Watson. And where can people find both of you?
On Instagram at David's Instagram. Or at David's Insta account. I don't know. Please just don't find me.
I'll link to it. They'll be able to find you.
I'm on Instagram, Base Phoenix, Twitch, Base Phoenix, and Twitter, God, what is it? Oh, Jelani T. Kelly. That's it.
All right, cool. Thank you for listening, and thank you, David, for coming
David.
on the show again.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah. See y'all next time.
Peace.